Zac Efron is allegedly a yacht boy. Speaking of yachting, it is very, very rare that the Svengali lets the former Disney actor out of his sight during yachting season.
A Svengali is a person who controls others with powerful mental manipulation.
Zac Efron earns a big payday while on a luxurious yacht with older men. His net worth has increased by $5 million from other ventures outside of acting.
Why would somebody with multiple stints in rehab vacation in Ibiza?
The actor from A Family Affair joined a group of friends on a yacht.
There's a reason the internet can't stop talking about Zac Efron right now. What started as a simple comeback story has spiraled into one of the most heated conversations about Hollywood transformations, lost opportunities, and whether fame itself is more curse than blessing. Zac has always been the golden boy of Disney's High School Musical era, but the person fans see today is almost unrecognizable, and not just in looks. Behind that smile, there's a timeline of pressure, health scares, and shocking revelations that most people never realized were happening.
There's also that suspicious hospitalization he had following a swimming incident, the moment where he slipped and broke his jaw. One person said, "Can't Zac get a gig on OnlyFans?" Sadly, this is not surprising to me.
But how did he go from a squeaky clean teen idol to someone whose every public appearance sparks speculation? And why does every new chapter of his career leave people asking the same haunting question? What really happened to Zac Efron? The truth is, Zac's story isn't just about Hollywood glamour. It's about survival. He skyrocketed to fame almost overnight. But the very machine that built him up may have also torn him down. And to understand where he is today, we need to rewind to the exact moment he became the face of an entire generation. From the very beginning, Zac didn't fit the typical Disney star mold. He wasn't groomed for fame from birth, and he wasn't a child actor hustling for years before getting noticed.
One person said that Zac Efron has been groomed his entire life. He shouldn't be judged for the results of that abuse.
He was just a regular kid from California who happened to land the role of a lifetime, Troy Bolton. That single casting choice launched him into a stratosphere no one could have prepared him for. Overnight, he went from performing in local theater productions to headlining one of the biggest teen franchises of all time. Millions of screaming fans, sold-out stadium tours, merchandise with his face plastered everywhere. Zac had the kind of instant fame that can break even the strongest personalities. And while most of us saw the smiles, the charm, the picture-perfect Disney boyfriend image, few noticed the toll it was already starting to take behind the scenes. The pressure wasn't just about being famous, it was about being perfect. Disney needed him to be the clean-cut heartthrob, the flawless leading man. The guy every teenager had a crush on and every parent approved of. But what happens when the real person doesn't match the image being sold? That's where the cracks started to show. Zac wasn't just acting in front of the camera. He was forced to act in real life too. Every interview had to be polished, every smile genuine, every move choreographed to keep the illusion alive. But maintaining that kind of mask 24/7 is exhausting, and it eventually set him up for a fall.
In 2013, the same year Zac was going to rehab repeatedly for cocaine and alcohol, and also supposedly broke his face by slipping in a puddle of water with socks on while running through his home. We'll get back to that, I promise. Well, that same year, Vanity Fair and Hollywood Reporter both published deep dives on how the Cannes Film Festival yachting scene was actually a major venue for sex work.
And they make a lot of money. I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, these rich men, they see Zac Efron, they like what they see, and of course, he's gonna be employed by them.
Thanks to a bombshell interview with insider Alina Haas, which was backed up by other verified Cannes regulars, it really paints a startling picture around what is otherwise known as one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world. And just how does Nahas know so much about this seedy underworld? Well, he was actually part of it. On top of owning a Beirut modeling agency, Nahas was a former right-hand man for—
There are a lot of modeling agencies that are designed just for the Cannes Film Festival. Like, there will be models who are scouted, told that they'll be working in France, but not told they'll be working on a boat and having to forced spread their legs. While there are a lot of yachters who do choose to do this, and we're not shaming them, there are some who have no idea what they're getting into, and they're essentially human trafficked.
Mutassim Gaddafi, the son of Muammar Gaddafi, who ruled Libya until he was assassinated by NATO in 2011, along with his son Mutassim. Before his death, Mutassim Gaddafi was known as a playboy. Like, we're talking booking out several floors of the most expensive hotels in London and Paris for his friends to stay in, flying out Italian hairdressers for 5,000 euros, and even allegedly spending millions on New Year's parties in St. Bart's that featured private performances by Mariah Carey, Beyonce, and Usher. This was Alina Haas's boss, and Haas ended up getting sentenced to 8 years in prison for operating a prostitution ring, specifically during tin can after a bust in 2007.
By the time he tried to transition into serious Hollywood films, the weight of that image followed him everywhere. He was typecast, criticized, and constantly compared to his teenage self. Even when he landed roles in projects like The Greatest Showman or Baywatch, fans weren't just watching Zac the actor. They were measuring him against Troy Bolton.
Vanessa Valladores? Another blind item reads, speaking of yachting, it is very, very rare that the Singali lets the former Disney actor out of his sight during the yachting season. He always has work for him. This blind item reads, just when you think this A-list actor was out of the clutches of the Singali, who has controlled much of his life, then you realize that the sober coach was sent by the Singali. She has been used for several projects by him. Well, Singali is like a term for someone who controls someone else, and this is about Zac Efron, Mohammed Al-Turki, and
for Zac, that became a prison. What most people didn't know was that behind the scenes, Zac was struggling with more than career choices. Reports began surfacing about his health, both mental and physical. He entered rehab at one point, something that shocked fans who still saw him as the invincible Disney star. But the truth is, he was fighting personal battles that no spotlight could hide. Hollywood thrives on gossip, and Zac became easy prey. Every small change in his appearance was dissected online. Every missed project fueled rumors. Every public sighting triggered debates about whether he was okay, and while some fans rallied to defend him, others turned his private struggles into viral memes.
One person writes, it always amazes me how seemingly successful people fall under the spells of these turds. This person adds, could it be that the Singali has info that the victim might be embarrassed to get out?
A Svengali is a person who controls others with powerful mental manipulation. This vanity name is revealed in this particular blind item to be Saudi Arabian film producer Mohammed Al-Turki. Zac was linked to Mohammed Al-Turki all the way back in 2012 in this blind item with photo evidence to boot. Zac was spotted in the south of France with both Mohammed and Alexandra Storm, a model who they noted usually travels the world with Mohammed. But this wasn't the first time Alexandra was seemingly paired up with Zac, with the item going on to say the same thing happened back in New York last year. And, quote, Zac visits Mohammed and Alexandra spends time with Zac. Thanks, Molly, unquote. Presumably a reference to the drug we know he struggled with. Interestingly, the item also praises Mohammed for staying away from Lindsay Lohan even though she'd, quote, tried to get her claws into him, unquote, because 1 year later, in April of 2013, there was a new blind item of him and Lindsay now spotted together.
Oh wow, when you see Lindsay's old face, it's like a jump scare.
You see how it starts to weave a web of all these people who operate in the same circles? This 2013 item says, quote, when one sugar daddy gets himself thrown in jail, Lindsay Lohan just finds another one to replace him. Last night, Lindsay showed off her new guy, Saudi producer Mohammed Al-Turki, as Lindsay looked entirely the worse for wear, and I'm sure that she is probably sporting some new bruises this morning, unquote.
I am gagged. What do you mean new bruises? This person writes, but this happened to Zac as an adult. He went yachting and hooked up with this dude and now is allegedly being blackmailed and abused by him. They also allege that all of Zac's injuries were caused by this man. Kind of like how Lindsay Lohan gets these bruises, it seems like this man beats them up whenever he doesn't get what he wants.
But there's more from another blind item from September of 2013, 5 months later. Quote, Lindsay was seen out yesterday with Mohammed Al-Turki, who last I heard had a plane full of women and Zac Efron at their feet like a panting lapdog. So how did Zac get involved with Mohammed? Well, remember how I said Mohammed is a film producer? Mohammed executive produced 9 films between 2010 and 2014.
Wow, so that's how they get you. Like, if you do me something, I'll give you a film role, and then you'll get fame and money, all what you want. And what they want is to use these people and also to kind of leverage their fame, to say, hey, I can get you Zac Efron, but it's gonna cost you more because he's in all of these movies. He's so desired.
And one of those was the fittingly named film Zac Efron starred in back in 2012 called At Any Price. Remember this photo at the At Any Price premiere back when Zac was trying to break out from the Team Disney branding? You might also remember that it was right around that time too that Zac started to have problems that kicked off a series of unfortunate events.
The turning point came when photos and videos of Zac sparked a storm of speculation. His jawline looked dramatically different, leading to endless plastic surgery rumors. People wondered if he had gone under the knife, while others believed it was the result of a freak accident that left him seriously injured. Zac eventually addressed the speculation, explaining that he had shattered his jaw in an accident at home. But by then, the internet had already formed its own narrative, one that continues to follow him. That's the double-edged sword of fame. No matter what the truth is, the perception sticks. And for Zac, perception has become both his greatest asset and his biggest enemy. What fans often forget is that Zac is human. He's not Troy Bolton anymore. He's not the 17-year-old heartthrob plastered on magazine covers. He's a man in his 30s who has lived through extreme highs and devastating lows, and yet the world refuses to let him move on from his past.
This person said, I still don't buy the jaw story. Tell whatever happened to him. My gut says whatever it is, it's not good. I mean, breaking your jaw, sounds painful. Comment below, has anyone broken their jaw here? And how do you even do that? Someone said that a gossip Reddit did a deep dive on Zac Efron's jaw timeline. His story did not match up with dated photos. His jaw was never wired shut long enough for the injury he's claiming, if it was ever wired at all. But he claims that he passed out, and when he woke up after hitting the corner of the fountain, his chin bone was basically hanging off his face. Oh my gosh, that sounds horrible.
That now that chin has more extension forward than it did previously. There's also increased width.
I think that he has had some jaw work. It looks more like an implant, whether that was metal plates or a jaw implant for aesthetics.
So going back to 2013, around the time he was stinting in and out of rehab, he broke his face and had to endure long-term physical therapy. A strange accident that wouldn't come to light until almost 10 years later. According to Zac, he was running in socks and supposedly slipped in a puddle of water, and that made him hit his chin on a marble fountain, causing it to shatter and hang off his face.
Ouch.
Yikes alert, Zac suffered a major accident over the weekend. E-News reports that his mouth is currently wired shut, and all because of a little fall.
But even through the chaos, Zac has tried to reinvent himself. His Netflix series Down to Earth with Zac Efron showed a completely different side of him, one that wasn't about Hollywood at all. Instead, it focused on health, travel, and environmental issues. It was raw, unfiltered, and perhaps the first time fans saw Zac as himself rather than a character. The show gained praise, but it also reignited conversations. Had Zac really changed, or was this just another performance?
The story of what actually happened seems really suspicious.
Days after it was reported that the High School Musical alum was hospitalized in Ibiza following a swimming incident August 2nd, multiple outlets have reported that Zac ingested water when his chest hit the bottom of the pool after his dive. And that's
So this was a really interesting moment. It was in Ibiza, and it looks like Zac was maybe partying. I don't know what happened. He fell into a pool, and I remember at one point reading rumors that he had died. This incident was really intense.
Security staff at the villa he was staying in pulled him out of the water after he showed signs of distress. The 36-year-old was taken to the hospital out of an abundance of caution after appearing temporarily dazed.
So he was vacationing in Ibiza and staying at a Spanish villa. According to some sources, a full month into an island vacation when he allegedly dove too deep into a pool and hit his chest on the bottom, causing him to inhale a bunch of water. Reports say Zac came up from the water dazed, and even though friends were present, it was 2 on-site security guards that pulled him out of the water. He was then rushed to the hospital, even though he was conscious, out of an abundance of caution, and held overnight. His PR team insisted the only reason he stayed until the morning was because the hospital was surrounded by photographers trying to capture the story.
Also, where is he diving into the pool? It must be very shallow. Not even 3 feet. I'm thinking it has to be a step, right? Unless he's jumping off a roof.
That's fair, but what adds to the strangeness is that in some versions of the story, he's swimming with those friends who I guess didn't help him out of the pool, and in other versions, he was discovered by the staff, implying that he was swimming alone. In either case, Zac posted to his Instagram story not long after his hospitalization with this mostly thirst trap image, thanking people for their concern and essentially proving that he was fit and healthy, saying, "Happy and healthy, thanks for the well wishes."
The irony is that while Zac tries to move forward, the internet keeps pulling him back. Every project he takes, every public appearance he makes becomes a debate about his past versus his present. It's almost as if the world can't decide what it wants from him, the perfect Disney prince or the flawed real man.
The correlations between Zac spending time with Mohammed and Zac winding up in the hospital. Like how in 2019, Zac was airlifted to a hospital in Brisbane, Australia after reportedly suffering a case of typhoid while shooting his reality show in Papua New Guinea, ironically called Killing Zac Efron. Which, it's a little odd because typhoid is one of the vaccines the CDC recommends before traveling somewhere like New Guinea where typhoid is common. And the timing coincides with this narrative from another blind item that came out in January 2020, only a month after Zac was airlifted.
It reads, I told you earlier this year that the Singali was back in the life of the former Disney star turned A-list, B-list adult actor. Then, a few months later, the actor almost ends up dead, just like the last time they were together, which is why the actor got out in the first place. And it goes back to our guy, Mohammed Tarki.
People think this is referring to Michelle Rodriguez, and we found photos that corroborate it. Zac was seeming unwell while undergoing his 6-month transformation into Von Erich for Iron Claw in 2023, and how a lot of people speculated part of his facial changes were actually from excessive use of HGH. Well, lo and behold, in July of 2023 a blind item saying, quote, the former Disney actor turned A- list adult actor / HGH lover is doing the whole beck and call thing of his personal Svengali, unquote. But I know this all seems very wild and far-fetched. I mean, it makes sense that a young actor would be friends with a young wealthy producer, and it's probably all above board, right? I mean,
the part that really catches me is the fact that Zac is getting his ass beat by this Mohammed guy.
how powerful could this producer be? Apparently powerful enough that he just officiated a backyard wedding that Elon Musk attended. Seriously, that soiree looks like half normal people and half wax museum replicas of the most famous people on the planet. And because it all comes back to the Svengali, remember how Zac attended the Venice Film Festival only a few weeks after his hospitalization? Well, guess who was being presented with a prestigious award at Venice this year? That's right, Mohammed.
The moment Zac thought he could finally break free of his past, the internet pulled him right back in. Clips of him resurfaced, memes spread like wildfire, and suddenly every move he made became evidence for one theory or another. People weren't just watching Zac's projects, they were dissecting his face, his voice, his posture. It was less about his talent and more about whether or not he still fit into the image fans had created for him years ago. But here's the reality: Hollywood isn't kind to anyone who dares to change. And Zac's transformation, whether caused by injuries, natural aging, or personal choice, became the perfect target. For years, he'd been the standard of boy next door perfection. The second that image cracked, the world pounced. And yet, what makes Zac's story different is how he handled it. Instead of lashing out or disappearing entirely, he leaned into authenticity. In interviews, he admitted that fame hadn't always been easy. He talked openly about burnout, about the toll physical training for movies took on his body, and about the reality of constantly being judged. For fans who had grown up idolizing him, this was the first time they saw Zac not as a star, but as a human being who was struggling just like them.
Now, what's interesting about Michelle Rodriguez is that it seems like she's really close to Mohammed, and at one point, they were pushing rumors that she and Zac were dating in 2014. Now, a lot of people were confused about this pairing because both of them have issues with drugs and partying, so it doesn't seem like they will be a good influence on each other. But at the time, they were trying to push a narrative that they were actually helping each other by both being sober and having this past. Zac actually shared a picture of Gianluca on Instagram, writing, "To my friend, the real life, most interesting man in the world. Never above you, never below, always by your side." And I just don't know what young, hot Zac Efron wants to be doing with these old guys hanging out and vacationing. But as we were looking through photos of Zac on yachts, there are so many different photos on Instagram where you could see him hanging out with mysterious men on these boats.
It was a risky move, but it worked. Suddenly, people weren't just criticizing, they were empathizing. The narrative began to shift from what happened to Zac Efron to has Hollywood failed Zac Efron?
Has a history of stints in rehab.
He's had issues with alcohol as well as cocaine and Molly, so pretty serious stuff.
The problem spiraled out of control back in April, but Zac has since completed his time in rehab. One source connected to the film, The Neighbors, tells TMZ that it was common knowledge that he was struggling with cocaine, and he would also be a no-show for a number of days.
So it seems like Zac really does not discriminate when it comes to all these drugs. He's down for them all.
On set.
Why would somebody with multiple stints in rehab vacation in Ibiza? Ibiza is basically the party and drug capital of the world. It's not a place sober addicts tend to go.
Still, the controversies didn't stop. His Netflix show, while successful, also opened him up to new forms of criticism. Some fans accused him of playing woke or using global issues as a rebranding tool. Others praised him for finally stepping outside the Hollywood machine and doing something meaningful. And that's the strange paradox of Zac's career. No matter what he does, half the world will praise him and the other half will tear him down. But in the middle of that noise, one thing became clear. Zac was no longer chasing validation. He wasn't trying to prove he was still the perfect teen idol. He was trying to find peace.
It was Zac Efron, Gerard Butler, and a bunch of women who were partying on a yacht in France at Saint-Tropez. Oh, who's this guy over here? Is this the guy who's paying the bills? Kind of looks like it.
Behind the scenes, Zac's personal life became another battlefield. Rumors about his relationships, speculation about his sexuality, endless paparazzi shots, it never stopped. And while he rarely confirmed or denied anything, fans read into every glance, every outing, every Instagram post. The obsession with who Zac is dating almost eclipsed the conversation about his actual career. But that's what happens when someone grows up in front of the world. To millions of fans, Zac isn't just an actor, he's a fantasy, a projection of who they wanted him to be. And when reality doesn't match the fantasy, the backlash is brutal.
Because at this rate, I don't know anyone else who's been on more yachts. In that same year, July 2024, we saw Zac Efron on the board of another yacht in St. Tropez. It actually looks like he was leaving with a bunch of designer items. This was at the same time that Vanessa was giving birth to her baby, so maybe Zac needed some retail therapy, had one of his sugar daddies take him out.
So where does that leave him today? In a strange place, caught between nostalgia and reinvention. Zac is no longer the singing basketball player from High School Musical, but he'll never truly escape that role either. At the same time, he's proven that he's capable of more. He's experimented with comedy, drama, action, even documentaries. And while not every project has been a hit, each one has been a step towards something bigger, carving out an identity on his own terms. And maybe that's the real story here. Not the jawline, not the rumors, not the endless debates on Twitter. The real story is a man who had fame forced upon him before he was ready, and who has spent the last decade trying to reclaim his life from the image the world refuses to let go of. Because when you look at Zac Efron now, you don't just see Troy Bolton, you see someone who has survived the machine of Disney stardom, the cruelty of online speculation, the brutality of Hollywood typecasting, and the suffocating weight of expectation. And he's still here. The big question is, where does he go from here? Will Zac ever get the Oscar-worthy role that finally silences the doubters? Or will he forever be trapped in the cycle of nostalgia and controversy? One thing is certain, Zac's story isn't over. In fact, it feels like it's just beginning again. And I want to know what you think. Has Zac been unfairly judged all these years? Or has he made choices that fueled the backlash himself? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is far from finished.